Hey folks, good morning and welcome to another episode of Steelers Morning Rush. I'm Alan Saunders. It is Wednesday, September 25th. We are getting ready for the Pittsburgh Steelers to have their first practice of the week leading up to their Week 4 game against the Indianapolis Colts. I will be on the south side for that and have practice video for you here in the form of sights and sounds on the channel, and be back with more from Zachary Smith to talk about it later in the day on Steelers Afternoon Drive. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any of our coverage from the Steelers Now team. But right now, we are going to talk about the Steelers' injuries. And man, I feel like they are getting to a point where it is something to bring up. I had several people ask me about the Steelers' injured reserve situation and the rules regarding the NFL injured reserve situation. So I figure let's clear that up first, because that is certainly something that is coming into play here. The Steelers, every NFL team can bring 8 players back from the injured reserve list over the course of a regular season. And so this when you put those 2 players on, they changed this rule. When they put these 2 players on at the beginning of the season, Dylan Cook and Jeremiah Moon, they were already designated for return. So 2 of those 8 have already been spoken for. The Steelers can only bring 6 players back from the injured reserve list additionally on top of Moon and Cook over the course of the rest of the season. And they've got a bunch of dudes on there. And so where or what happens with these players, I think is really interesting, because I think there's a chance that, like, the reason that, say, Michael Pruitt has not been placed on injured reserve is that the Steelers are getting concerned that they're running out of spots to return from. I saw Michael Pruitt on Monday in a gigantic knee brace. He already missed 1 game. It's almost impossible to imagine him not missing more than 1 game. But okay, here's the rundown. Ben Skoranek, Corey Trice, Tyler Matakevich, Logan Lee. That's 4 more on top of Dylan Cook and Jeremiah Moon. So right now, if the Steelers brought everyone back who is eligible to return from their injured reserve list, and I'm not counting guys like Cameron Johnston and Troy Fautanu, who have sort of already been ruled out for the season. By the way, in Fautanu's situation, you get 2 additional returns in the postseason. Okay, so those guys don't count in the math. Nate Herbig, David Perales, Ryan Watts, those guys were put on IR before the start of the season. They are ineligible to return. But so if the Steelers brought back Matakevich, Skoranek, Trice, Lee, and now this latest one, so like that's 6 of their 8 that they would be using right now if everybody who's on IR came back. So they only get 2 more. It's week 3. They still have 14 weeks of the season. Now, obviously, when you get to the very end, you just assume that people that are going to miss 4 weeks aren't coming back at all. But they've used 3/4 of their IR returns in the first 3 weeks of the season, or potential IR returns in the first 3 weeks of the season. That's a lot. So now, how does this work? So as these guys go on injured reserve, when they get healthy enough to practice, the Steelers can designate them to return. Okay, they can start to practice. All right, they have 3 weeks from when they start to practice to either be brought back onto the roster or to be made permanent. So remember with Calvin Austin, with his Liz Frank injury his rookie year, he got back to the practice part, and then he re-injured it, and then when he re-injured it, even if that wasn't a season-ending injury, because those 3 weeks went by, he was done. He was out for the year. Okay, and so no one's individual movement will be restricted until they return to practice. At that point, you have 3 weeks to make a decision on whether they have to be on or off. I don't know who's going to be the first one to get back to practice out of this group. It doesn't seem like Jeremiah Moon is too far away. And honestly, with the injury to Alex Highsmith, they could really use the depth at outside linebacker. I don't get the sense that the injuries to Skoranek and Matakevich are particularly devastating. I don't know. I mean, I don't see guys that look like they're headed for surgery, that's for sure. So those guys, who can come off when? Moon and Cook and Lee are eligible to come off in week 5. I've talked to Cook already about it, and it doesn't seem like he's going to come back then. I think it'll be more time for him. But Moon and Lee are eligible to come off in week 5. Matakevich and Skoranek are eligible to come off in week 6. And now Trice will not be eligible to come off until week 8. And then also, sort of happening at the same time, Cole Holcomb is eligible to come off the PUP list in week 5, and Cameron Sutton can come off the suspended list in week 8. So you have a bunch of guys that could come back. Holcomb and Sutton do not count towards those IR returns. But let's just talk about the sheer number of players injured. The Steelers fired their entire strength and conditioning staff this offseason, replaced them with staff from Boston College. Phil Matus, who's from Western Pennsylvania, a native, was at Boston College before, came in. First step was not a good one, with Russell Wilson injuring his calf and that conditioning test on the first day of training camp. Since then, a whole bunch of soft tissue injuries. I mean, things like Cameron Johnson getting run over in the game are going to happen. Things like Ryan Watts injuring his neck and making a tackle. Doesn't matter, your strength and conditioning staff doesn't make any difference there. But there's a whole bunch of soft tissue injuries here. Hamstring for Trice, groin for Highsmith, pec, and I think it's a hamstring for Matakevich as well. That's a calf for Logan Lee. It was a calf for Dean Lowry when he missed a lot of time in training camp. That should be a little bit concerning to me. I think the number of injuries is generally pretty fluctuable. It's hard to take a 3-game sample seriously, but it just does seem like a lot of soft tissue injuries early on here. And I think Alex Highsmith said when we interviewed him on Monday that he is going to take a look at his offseason workout plan and make some changes to it going forward based on him injuring his groin in training camp and now again in the regular season. That to me is a serious indictment of the Steelers' new strength and conditioning staff, that one of your star players is saying, what I did this summer was not right and I'm going to change it. And so, look, new to the NFL level, certainly deserve, some time to figure it out, but it's not a good look early right now for the Steelers strength and conditioning staff. I do think it's fair to be concerned about the Steelers' level of injuries. And like I said, some of them just happen. You can't do anything about Troy Fautanu dislocating his knee in practice. No amount of strength and conditioning is going to prevent that. No amount of strength and conditioning is going to prevent, David Perales from blowing out his knee in a training camp drill. Like, those things are going to happen. But the amount of soft tissue injuries I see is definitely concerning. And I think really Highsmith saying what he said, the way he said it to me, really should raise some red flags about what the Steelers are doing in terms of preseason training. And I think the proof is in the pudding with the number of soft tissue injuries they're dealing with right now. Let me know if you have any other questions about rules, about weird things, about the Steelers, about hot takes, whatever you got. I love suggestions for this early morning podcast. And, of course, me and Smitty are always taking questions on Steelers Afternoon Drive. So leave a comment if there's something else you want to know. Try to get to it when I can get to it. Until next time, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Enjoy.